right now, so you're on a recorded line. Just want you to all be aware of that. We're going to do that for the benefit of others that can't join us today. And so our format is going to be pretty simple here. The entire length we've set aside is 90 minutes. We really want to keep it to about an hour, but we're going to extend a little bit over for Q&A as necessary. And Max has a few slides that he wants to present. Then we're also going to ask Jamie and Ian to offer some insights based on the experience that the most common questions that they're getting and that they're seeing. So we want to anticipate some of your questions. None of these people are experts on federal assistance programs, but they're all experts on what they do. And so they're here to help us to navigate. So with that, we're using Zoom today, and I see so many happy faces. Great. The more of you that put your video on, we appreciate, because we are here in this community trying to navigate this all together. That's totally optional, but it's welcome. And so I'm going to turn it over to Max. He's going to share some slides, and then we'll turn it over to Jamie and then Ian. And then after that, we'll open it up. So Max, you're on.
Thank you. Can you hear me, Brian?
Yes, we can.
Oh, great. Thanks for the introduction there, Brian. I'm Max Mertz, and I'm a CPA here in Juneau. Over the last few weeks, well, actually 10 days to 2 weeks, it seems like a lot longer time. I've been contacted by a lot of friends who own businesses, a lot of clients who are obviously expressing a deep concern with the impact of the shutdown that's going on right now on their businesses, among other concerns, obviously. And so I've been working through first with the bill that was passed by the Senate. I think they passed it on Tuesday or Wednesday, understanding that, and then the final bill that was passed by the House on Friday last week and signed by President Trump. You know, one thing that's really important to understand here is that this is moving very quickly. And, you know, here we are 2 or 3 days, business days after President Trump signs this bill, which is the largest, you know, financial package ever passed by Congress. And we're talking about, you know, potentially having money sent out on this within the next couple of weeks. It really is pretty mind-boggling when you consider the speed, but I would appreciate it if you'd understand that, you know, this is based on my read of the bill. You know, I've been through it top to bottom a few times, but certainly we'll be getting more information as the rulemaking is coming out from the various federal agencies on how to implement this and how the banks are, you know, going to handle the you know, bank component of this. You know, there are some, you know, significant financial impacts that will continue to come, and you know, hopefully we can all, you know, learn and work together and you know, get through this. I have 3 slides this morning. One is covering some unemployment insurance questions about the act. The second has to do with the Paycheck Protection Program, and then the third slide is the economic injury disaster loans that are available. Unemployment insurance, and Brian, just confirming you can see my slide there. I'm not hearing you, Brian.
Not at the moment. We need you to share your screen now.
I've got it shared on, says to me I'm sharing it on 2. Can you not see that?
Nope, you had it up earlier.
How about that? Can you see that? Are you able to see that, Brian?
Nope, no, we can't. And I'm assuming no one else can if I can't.
Max, if you turn on the video on the lower right hand or lower left hand corner, that may be it, because when you're talking, it only comes up with your name, so we're not seeing you as well. There you go.
All right. So can you, let's see, let me share a screen 2. Can you see it now? Screen 2?
Max, are you working with a double screen?
Yeah.
Slide it over to the other side.
All right.
And then you're hitting share screen on the bottom, the green button.
Yeah. Yeah. It says I'm sharing screen. Are you able to see that now?
You're not. And just for everyone, he did this successfully twice before we got on the call. I just want you to know that.
Well, I apologize here. I should have sent these. So again, we're not seeing anything.
You want to send them to? You could send them to me, and I can see if I can run from this side.
All right. Let's try to do that.
To do that.
Sorry about that. It was up just a minute ago.
It was working perfectly.
Yeah. Hold one, Brian.
No problem. We got it going.
All right. It's coming to you. I'll tell you what, while we're trying to get that up, I'll start through the first section on unemployment insurance. And then hopefully in the meantime, Brian can get that up. The unemployment provisions are extended to $600 per week. I think a lot of people are aware of that. It's important to understand that the $600 is an add-on to the Alaska rate, which is $56 to $370 per week, depending on your income before you were laid off. So, depending on, your income, it's going to be somewhere between $656 and $970. Are you up now, Brian?
One more second here. Just keep going. You're doing great.
So, there's been some questions around what is a layoff, and the layoff. Oh, I'm seeing that.
You're on the screen now.
Okay, great. Thank you, Brian. And we're on again the first slide here. The act specifically excludes people who are able to work remotely. So if you have the ability for your employees in your business, and I understand many of you don't, just by nature of your business. I mean, Kenny was just up, and of course, Kenny, you can't work remotely when you're operating a movie theater. But in those cases where you can, and the employee is able to continue to work, that employee is still considered an employee and still working, and so would not be eligible for unemployment insurance. The coverage is 39 weeks. So the bill has extended unemployment insurance for 39 weeks from the date. And there's actually some retroactive provisions as to when that unemployment insurance started. So, when you go to the state website and somebody's applying for unemployment, that's where those specific questions will get answered. I've gotten a lot of questions about, do I lay off my employees or do I try to keep them on? And I mean, that's, kind of the first question. And there's a lot of business considerations that go into that, obviously. And the second one is, how does this interact with the other aid that is available to my business? And so under the Paycheck Protection Program, which is on the next slide, we'll talk about here in just a minute. You're only allowed to get up to 8 weeks of payroll costs reimbursed. So to a certain degree, the question it has, am I better off retaining my employees with the hope that in 4 weeks or 6 weeks, I'm going to be able to resume normal or something approaching normal business operations? Or is this thing going to continue for such a period of time that, likely it'll significantly exceed that. And, that's one consideration. The other piece is, what will Congress do as a next step? Speaker Pelosi and others have said that, this first bill, as huge as it is kind of a first step, and they're going to be continuing to work on, ways to help businesses, ways to help individuals. And so, there's an uncertainty here, but, in general, if you feel like you don't have other resources available to you, and you have to make a decision to downsize your payroll, especially in order to basically, allow your business to stay in business, hopefully after this is over. You may make a decision to lay your employees off, or you might, use that extra benefit that's available to you to try to retain them. And again, it's case by case. I would, the last point there on the bullet is talk to your CPA. There's a lot of very capable and competent accountants here in town that are, serving the business community. And, I would walk through this at a kind of a detail level and the issues that you're dealing with your CPAs. You need to understand that, there is a capacity issue here, and certainly, being able to work through all of these calls is an issue. So Brian, why don't we go through the second and third slides, and then we can come back to questions. So this is the second slide. So under section 1102 of the Paycheck Protection Program, there was $349 billion, that's with a B, that was set aside for basically a program that allows employers to receive loans with a potential for forgiveness of those loans if they meet certain criteria, in order for them to continue their payroll. This loan, by definition, is really only available for payroll costs, and it's only available for payroll costs because it's based on your payroll. One of the things, it's also an amendment of Section 7A of the Small Business Act. Section 7A loans are those small business loans that are always around, and they basically took 7A and greatly modified it, enhanced it. And one of the modifications that they did, and I've got a spreadsheet. Unfortunately, you guys can't see it because I'm having a screen sharing issue. But in any event, the bill has been extended to basically cover just about any business entity under 500 employees in the country. I mean, there's now sole proprietors are included, contractors are included, single owner businesses with employees are included. Nonprofit organizations are included, tribal business entities are included. So they, one of the things that they extended was, who's covered under this. So, if you're a nonprofit organization, for example, you need to be aware of the fact that this is available for you. The calculation is basically, it's pretty straightforward, really. There's some adjustments that are made to it, but you basically take your average salaries for a month. And there's two options there. One is if you don't have a lot of seasonality to your business, it's an average of the prior 12 months of expenses. If you have a lot of seasonality, there's two look back periods in 2019 that you look back to see, are you covering an adequate amount of salaries? And there's just a calculation related to the seasonality. The limit of that is $10 million. So basically you come up with an average salary over an annual or seasonal basis, and you multiply that by 2.5 times, and that's the amount of the loan. There is a provision that allows you to roll economic injury development loans, EIDL loans, into this loan if that EIDL loan is obtained prior to the availability of the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program. So you can, if you need money now, you can go out and get the EIDL loan, and then once your PPP rolls in, your banker can roll one into the other. But please understand that those rules, as Mr. Kistner will be telling, Jamie will be telling you here in a minute, are still being developed. The interest rate is at 4% for 10 years. You have a deferral of principal and interest payments of 6 months or a year that you can make. And it's important to understand that you can't double dip. So if you're getting covered under one program, you can't also get covered under another program. I don't think there's a lot of small businesses in Juneau that have that potential for double dipping, but That is something that you need to be aware of. And certainly when you're applying for your PPP loan, I'm sure those applications will be included. I'll talk about the forgiveness component, and then I'll turn it over to Jamie to have him share with you what he knows. But the forgiveness component basically says you can have this PPP loan forgiven up to the equivalent of 8 weeks of payroll beginning on the date of the loan origination, whatever your payroll is. So, one thing to keep in mind is if you've already downsized your payroll quite a bit, and you're not planning on bringing those employees back on, your forgiveness amount is going to be considerably less just by virtue of the fact that you've downsized your payroll. It also, however, that forgiveness also includes interest on mortgage. It includes rents on leasing agreements, utilities. So those get added in for forgiveness purposes. But essentially what you do is you take your total loan amount, you reduce the forgiveness piece, and then the difference is amortized over up to 10 years at 4%. Jamie, do you want to kind of chime in on this now?
Sure, Max. I'll do my best to cover anything that you might have missed regarding this program and what I know as of yesterday. So, can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah. So, following up with what Max was saying, I can speak on behalf of North Rim. I also sit on the Alaska Bankers Association and attend biweekly calls as well. There's a couple of programs that Max didn't touch on. So the state of Alaska and ADA is also working on a program for small business folks that is still fluid and ever changing. And I've only seen some rough drafts of their proposed financing. So I can keep Brian and everybody apprised of that when that rolls out. But for the time being, ADA and the state of Alaska are trying to come up with a way to help, local businesses within the state. So not a lot to speak on that. Moving forward with this CARES Act, I can speak for me. I don't know if there's any other bankers on the phone. We have been absolutely inundated with phone calls, requests, emails, inquiries from existing, new customers, people we don't even know for this program. From what we understand, it's in process and it's being rolled out. The unfortunate part is that as of today, we have zero guidance from SBA on how to apply for the CARES Act and the Payment Protection Program. So as of yesterday, we as in North Rim are still waiting on guidance on how to apply for this. We're a 7A lender already. We have a portal that we use called SBA One, where we typically would log in. We're able to originate applications and follow guidelines and protocols for those other programs. As of today, there's no application that's been communicated to us. There's no policies or procedures. There's no documentation requirements that we know of. So U.S. Secretary of Treasury Mnuchin said on the news yesterday they expect an application to be available next week. So what North Rim is doing, we have started a master spreadsheet, and we're just throwing names, businesses, contact information on a spreadsheet for folks that have called and inquired about this program in order to try to not let anybody fall through the cracks. But I just want to reiterate as well a couple other things. We're all in this together. North Rim has rolled out some programs, some payment deferrals for our existing customers. But I can say that no bank wants to foreclose on, no bank wants to put any business, out of business. We're all in this together. So with that said, the program's evolving. I can speak to some more specifics if folks want. Are there any questions based on what I said?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, Brian. Let's get through all the slides here, and then we'll come back and go through Q&A. I think that might be just to cover.
Yeah, Max, let's give Ian just a couple minutes, and then
Yeah.
we'll go to Q&A. Yep, that's great. Continue,
Okay,
please.
I'll just finish up these last couple of slides then, and then we'll do Ian too. Just to finish up the second slide, one thing to keep in mind is that you want to, as Jamie said, you want to contact a lender now. If you think you're interested in the PPP program, get on their list. It'll take a while for them to come back, but you want to let them know and work with them. As Jamie said, there's a lot of banks here in Juneau. Wells Fargo's one. They're a preferred SBA lender. First National Bank, I've talked to them the last couple of days. They will be participating in this program, and I'm sure there's others. Those are just the three I know of for sure. But call your banker. Start by calling your banker and just get your name on the list.
Hey, Max, can I add to that, Max?
Yeah.
Yeah, so typically with the SBA 7A program, you need to be a preferred lender, and there's only a couple preferred lenders in the state. Wells Fargo, Key Bank, North Rim. That question came up with Senator Begich and Lieutenant Governor Meyer on the phone with the Alaska Bankers call, and it is our understanding that that requirement will not be in place, and so basically any and all banks that want to participate credit unions will be eligible. So like Max said, call out, talk to your banker, get in line, because there will be a lot of requests. The disaster loan program, we understand there were 3 million applications submitted within like the first week. So as you all know, folks are, across the country are all in the same boat trying to find some money.
Yeah, maybe just to tag on one more thing too is, the reason to talk to your banker if you haven't been contacted by them already is that, there's other things that you can do kind of with your traditional mortgage or line of credit that, would potentially give you some relief. And obviously that, that'd be case by case with your banker, but things like on a mortgage type lending commercial loan, going to an interest only provision for some period of time, basically not paying any interest, where you go through a forbearance period. There's some general mortgage forbearance provisions that are in the act, and all of those, whether it's a local bank or if you've got lending from an outside lender, you definitely want to be contacting them and finding what's available to you. It's important to understand, I'm not aware of at this point, maybe Jamie is, but I don't think that there's anything that says that interest charges are going to be suspended. So if you stop paying interest, you're still going to be accruing interest. It's just a matter of the timing of when you pay that interest. Do you pay it at the end of the loan, or is it they're going to do some other, kind of modification to your loan? But, get a hold of your lender is the takeaway. Anything to add to that, Jamie?
No, I think that's a great point. We at Northrim have offered some payment deferral programs for our existing customers, either interest only or no payments, that forbearance period you're talking about. And those loans are all staying in accrual. And what that means is that they will continue to be charged interest. And we're just kicking it to the end of the loan and trying to give folks some breathing room in the event, after 90 or 120 days, we have a better understanding of what this looks like. Today nobody knows how long this is going to last, and just give everybody some breathing room, and then maybe reevaluate in 90 or 120 days and decide, well, maybe we need to kick this down the road, another 6 months, but we'll make that decision then, not today.
Okay, so the third slide there, Brian, you want to do on the EIDL?
Oh, I do. Sorry, Max. I was just queuing up the SBA slide, but I'll go back to yours. So I apologize for that.
Well, if you want to do Ian, that's fine. We can come back to that if you'd like. Sure, show Brian. However you want to do it.
Yeah, well, since I've already got that queued up, Ian, are you ready to go? I got your slide here, and then we'll go back to Max and wrap it up.
Yeah, sure. We can take a look at it.
Great. Thanks, Ian. And Max and Jamie, just make sure you take a look at the chat. People have been dropping in questions there. That'll kick off our Q&A. Go ahead, Ian. Thank you.
In this one, I'd like to add a little bit more to this. I was trying to put something quick together for everybody this morning from the information that we've gathered. But the first thing, no matter what I suggest everybody, I'm not sure maybe it's on page 2, Brian, I'm sorry. Am I controlling this or are you?
I'm controlling it. I'm controlling it at this point.
Can you scroll down a little bit until there's a $10,000 grant I want to get to? Keep going a little bit. It's under the EIDL. This was new as of Saturday, I believe. And so when I noticed a couple of the questions, oh, there you go, right there. There you go. Thank you. So, you know, a lot of the information that I've learned and we've learned so far across the state is not coming directly from the SBA. It's coming from us calling the call centers. Usually it's me. I get up at 4 a.m. and try and call. That's when I have the most success. The last word I heard as of yesterday, I know our statewide network met with the America's SPDC, who's trying to get final language and interpretation of the bill, so we can actually tell people for certain, what amounts are going to be granted back, what exactly you need to do in order to qualify for that. So unfortunately, because the bill was passed on Friday, I too and the SPDCs in Alaska and across the country are waiting for final word from the SBA before we have their official language on what we can tell clients. So what I've done so far then is gathered all the resources I can in the interpretations of the bill. But this right here is, and sorry, this is referencing the question, I think I'm not sure who it was from, but what can we do in the meantime? I would absolutely recommend everybody goes to this disaster loan website right now and applies for it. I've worked with, it's been 11 hours a day, every day working with people. I've been working through the weekends, getting people ready for the applications, making sure they have all that they're gonna need. And what we're assuming is gonna also be required on follow-up. We've had a couple businesses already that have last week have gone through the first round of applications and have already been called back for second rounds of tax returns. So I know a little bit more about what people might be requesting on the second end or on the second call with the SBA. But what they did this weekend, they've had multiple site problems. We can talk about that in a minute, but this $10,000 for small businesses is huge right now. This is something that's going to be granted. And as you go to the SBA site right now, and I can drop that link in the chat here in a minute, but they had such an overwhelming response to these applications that they kept trying to patchwork the site because it kept failing on them. Too many people were going through. So what they've done now, instead of having to require, there's about 4 documents that you need to upload, and I'm sharing those with everybody as well if you need to see them. But the 4 documents that people are having to upload, they've taken that out of the application process right now and just put kind of a 30,000 foot level when you go in through the applications. One of the things you can do when you go in through that application is to check a box to say that you want to be eligible for this 10,000 grant for small businesses that they're saying should come within 3 days. So the last conversation I had with the SBA was yesterday morning about 5 a.m. our time. And yes, this is in effect, and they're saying this should be within 3 days as applications are received. So I just had people start applying for this yesterday, a couple people on Sunday, but this became incredibly popular yesterday, and it's easy to do. When you apply for the EIDL loan through that website, you're immediately eligible for this $10,000, and then at least you have your place in the line. And what I've been suggesting to every client and business that I've worked with so far is to go and apply for this right now. You're not required to take the funding or agree to the terms once it becomes available to you, but at least you have your place in the line and you're eligible for that 10,000 right now. And so as we all interpret the bill and what this means for the small businesses in Juneau, at least our businesses are they're applied for, and they're ready to be covered, so that as we interpret this and we find out what the final language is, we're going to know how to respond to it and what to accept. Something I want to point out here, and with this injury disaster loan, is early on, about maybe March 21st or the 20th, when we started talking to the SBA about this, is they were looking at, and what I still have not seen is the specific language about employees and the EIDL, because I was told, and a number of our advisors were told as we were speaking to the loan applicants, to the SBA call centers, not loan officers, but call centers, is that depending on how portions of this loan were used, it would be granted back and not be at a 3.75% loan, which would be deferred over 5 months and extended. So there's still, the point is with that interpretation of trying to find out exactly what the language is so we know how to advise clients, there's nothing wrong with getting in and getting this application done now so your foot's in the door. So that's my first recommendation. And I'm trying to get everybody prepared for that. That's, and to prepare for that, you know, if you actually go before the site was just overwhelmed and not able to upload all the documents. I don't know if any of you on the line have done so, but I've had at least 40 businesses I can't even tell. I don't know. There was about 450 sessions as of Saturday across the state, and a huge chunk of those was in Juneau. I mean, since Saturday, I think the 20th or 21st, it's been getting people doing this all day, every day, 11 hours yesterday, 7 a.m. until 6 o'clock. We were just going all day long, getting people ready. And I think what you can do to prepare to make this even easier once you are called back from the SBA is to have those documents ready. And that's what I'm sending to folks right now. So everybody who's working with me, the first thing that we're trying to do is get them through the application process, get them through the door, get them through the disaster loan part, through this $10,000 application. But then there's going to be certain forms that are required, like a 4506 gives the SBA a right to look at past tax returns. So we're helping people get that ready. There's been a lot of confusion about the applications because what the SBA has done is they've used some common documents that you might use across the country under other circumstances. So the application's not just tailored for the Corona disaster loan, right? So an example is on the first page of the application. If you're filling out the paper document, there's a question towards the bottom that asks you the damage to your property, and people just get hung up on that. So they're confused and they're not understanding what to do and where that hooks them up. So it's okay to be putting question marks and lines through it because you don't have to answer that, right? Another common problem was in the original application process. It was the original question 16 was asking if you own 50% or more of another business, and people were answering yes because they were under the assumption that they were talking about their business. But really, the best way to approach all of this is to be thinking of your business applying, not you personally. And so that's created tons of problems, and not just in Alaska. I was calling the week before it opened up to our state to find out what some of the common pitfalls were. And these were the same items that are affecting us right now. And what I mean by that, so people were saying, yes, that they own more than 50%, but really that's asking, does your business own 50% or more of another business? So it was getting quite confusing for people. The other form that folks are using is a personal financial statement. It's just a generic form from the SBA. This is creating tons of confusion because it's not a personal financial statement. Like for me, it would be a personal financial statement of my business, right? And so items like that are what I've been working people through so that we don't have those applications getting kicked back. And there's a couple more major items on some of those documents, but that's the type of work that I've been trying to get people with right now, or get through right now, because I know that the interpretation of this bill is going to come, but the best thing I can do right now is get folks through the application process while we've dealt with 3 different site iterations so far as they're trying to fix their original portal up. And I don't know if any of you have been on, or for any of you who look at this later, what the SBA should have done. I was told that it would be by this weekend, but we're at Tuesday now? That the site that is currently up is streamlined. It's meant to get people through quickly, but very soon there's supposed to be the original portal back where you can log in, register, get a password, go in and check on your application process, make sure that you have all the documents included. We're just not at that stage yet right now. How it was described to me by the last person at the SBA was that because of the overwhelming response, they want to make sure that they can keep processing people. So they put up an easy way to get people at least in the door and into the process. So, I think right now it's trying to get everyone through calmly and trying to help people where we can to make this part of the process easy. Because I see that a lot of the stress that is happening is just because the process itself is so cumbersome right now, and it's hard to understand. So one, we're working with businesses trying to get them to take a breath for a second while we can at least get them applied. Then we can do the interpretation of some of this bill while we're trying to find out how it specifically we can apply it and for how long. But to me, I'm trying to look past, and Max pointed this out, that we're talking about 8 weeks. So I'm trying to look past that right now, and get businesses, once they do go in, once they apply, I'm trying to get folks in so we can create a longer, a 5-year model for everybody based on their financials, so that we can now look at, pending what type of sales reduction we're looking at how long this might last for, what can we prepare for 8 weeks from now after some of these relief funds are done. What are the next steps? And it's that working through the JEDC with potential loans coming up. I just heard about ADA's, that $1 billion guarantee this morning. So looking at all the efforts combined, how do we as Juneau businesses move forward past 8 weeks? So this is, I think, to me, the first step is get people in the door through the application process, try and get people this $10,000 at least right now. Hopefully work with the banks on the bridge loan. I know that the bridge loan information came up, and everybody we've talked to so far, and I think all banks is saying the same thing, that yes, we've heard that it's available, but they don't have what they need to be able to start lending on that yet. So I think a lot of the problem that we've encountered in the stress is that so much is coming out on the news or the television that people are expecting or wanting right now, but we're all we have to wait for the SBA, or we have to wait for the banks, and we're all, that all has to come down a pike. So I know, I guess try to mitigate the stress and the issues by making what we can easy right now is what I'm focused on. And I put this quick cheat sheet together that's an overview of the program, some of the overview, the requirements, what businesses are eligible or not. I'm trying to work on this every day because like I said, we're talking to folks every day who are trying to interpret this. I can't interpret the bill for you myself. I know what I read when I'm going through these cheat sheets. I'm just trying to make it easy right now, and I'm hoping my next steps are going to be to dive into more of conversations, not with just call center folks, but the people actually processing the loans through the disaster relief, because that's the biggest question that we have is this going to be a 3.75%? Is it going to be deferred for 5 months? When can I count on these funds coming in? Because people need to start, we're talking to businesses right now who are obviously having to lay off folks. And I think some of the bigger questions too that we have to look at is when a lot of the businesses are talking to me about this sounds, it's favorable that they can go to the PPP loans, but then what's happening to unemployment? What are employment payment schedules compared to what some of the folks are getting paid in the businesses, especially the restaurant industry, where especially in the wintertime, honestly, what if folks don't want to be hired back right now? So I'm dealing with a lot of those questions too. So I think there's a lot of unknown out there, and I guess we're trying to do our best to manage it. And I think the best information I have is here in this cheat sheet, and also on the I know on the AKSBDC website we've tried to dedicate one page to just COVID disaster loan information. I know that our staff is putting up new videos for people trying to go through the common problems that we're seeing, because every day we're getting a list of questions that we're trying to respond to. I volunteered to be that person who gathered those questions, and then in the morning I call the SBA and try and get as much information as I can. But if any of you have called the SBA lately, when you call in, you're lucky if you get under, caller 1500 and have a 2-hour wait line. So, and I'd offer to do that for any of you folks too. If you send me your questions, if you have anything specific, I'll be doing that again tomorrow and asking questions from the SBA. That's kind of a bunch of information. I'll answer any questions if you have them. But.
Great, thanks, Ian. Let's, this chat is filling up with lots of questions, which is great. So let's go back to Max here to wrap up the presentation part, and then we'll try to ask you 3 gentlemen to try to pound through those questions in the chat. Max?
Yeah, hey, Brian, you want to put up the 3rd slide there? And actually, Ian, I'm great. It was great that Ian covered it. A lot of what's on here, I thought I'd just maybe focus on a couple of things. So the EIDL loan, which Ian did a great job of covering, the link for the application is on the screen here as well. And it's interesting. You covered the change in the websites on I think it was Monday. I was able to, go into the portal and register for a client and basically get the application done that way. And I think it was by Thursday when I was trying to do it for another client. It was to that, what looked like a kind of an FTP site where you basically completed the application, uploaded it that way. So, I know that they're getting awfully slammed. Maybe just a couple of things to highlight on here. Ian did a great job about, saying you need to get on there and apply now. He covered the emergency grant provisions that are inside of that component. It has a broad, which is the $10,000 that he talked about. It has a very broad kind of use, much more broad than the PPP program. So, there's more costs that are allowable under that program. And, Ian, maybe you could talk. One thing that I'm confused about myself is that the loan amount is for up to $2 million. But when you're doing the loan application, it doesn't necessarily have amount. When will they loop back and basically lock you in on a dollar amount for your loan?
Yeah, I'm unmuted right now, right? You guys can hear me?
No, we hear you.
Okay. So what I've been told, this is why estimating damages, like on that first sheet, and if you guys have gone through that, depending on which process you went through, I'm sorry, not which process, which website iteration you went through, how it's been explained to me, and this is why I'm trying, another recommendation, sorry, I should have said earlier, is definitely folks who are not working with CPAs right now, they're having the hardest time if it's not someone who's keeping accurate records and the books aren't perfect, then they're estimating quite a bit. And the problem with that is that what the SBA is doing is they're looking at, they're asking for the current year's tax returns when you're applying. I'm suggesting everybody have 3 to 4 years ready, because I know that that's been requested on follow-up calls. So if we get to the point where you're applying and you can upload documents, I haven't checked the website in the last hour or so. I don't believe it's been updated yet. But if you do get to the point where we're applying and you're able to upload the documents, I would have 3 to 4 years tax returns ready, and make sure you're accurately working on the personal financial statement, which, remember, is that of the business, not of the person. And also that schedule of liabilities. I think that's a Form 1220. I can't remember offhand which one it is. But what they're doing is they're looking at the tax returns, the summary of those returns from the 4506 that you turn in, and the schedule of liabilities. And this SBA is determining what working capital needs you're going to have to be able to keep the doors open during the disaster period. So that's when, after they review the documents that you've uploaded, then you're getting actually the call back from the loan officer, the person you'd be working with through the SBA, who, if there's any final documents that are needed, or then that's when you'll find out the final amount that's going to be allotted to you. So that's the best information I have right now, because when I've called, I've not been able to, I only speak to people at the call center like everyone else. I call the 1-800, and those are, if you spend some time talking to them, they're wonderful people doing a hard job. But they're not the people processing the loans. They're just helping people process the applications right now. So when you get into specifics, which I've tried to do so that I can model out some of these scenarios with businesses, I don't have that information yet, or it's just not being shared with me. So, sorry, to sum that up, we don't get to apply for a certain amount. They're looking at your schedule of liabilities, tax returns, and working capital needs, and basing the funding that's going to be needed for your business.
So maybe one last thing to just put on the table here for folks for their information, and we go to Q&A. Last week, I and Brian have been working with Mayor Weldon and Assemblymember Carol Treem about a CBJ-based emergency loan program that, in its draft, and what will be presented tonight to the Assembly, is $3 million available for grants of either $25,000 or $50,000, depending on the size of your business. And those loans would be interest-free for the first year. They'd be up to 30 months long, and then after the first year would have an interest rate of 2%. Obviously, it has to go through the city process, and these loans are intended for businesses that are really suffering cash flow issues dramatically right now. So, businesses that need to be able to make payroll or need to be able to cover some cost. And, the idea is to try to make something available to them as soon as possible. That was the intent. Obviously it's an emergency appropriation. It requires 7 of 9 votes. And the city, the assembly has to evaluate that and the pros and cons. But, I would recommend that at the tonight's meeting, the assembly meeting, you dial in or participate in that meeting and hear about it. And also, if this is important for your business, this cash flow, I'd let your assembly members know about that today. And just the fact that, there is some real acute need right now. So there's some other programs out there that are possibilities. There's a state program, to be honest with you, I have not been able to get my arms around. Maybe either Jamie or Brian or Ian have that information, but that's all I had. So thank you.
One more thing before we go to the questions, I think, is pointing out that if you look at that, and I'd be happy to send that sheet that I have out, but the people who are currently under 504 microloans or 7A loans, you can work with the SBA on deferring those interest payments. I think it says up to 6 months right now. So that's been another huge question that I've had for folks who currently are under an SBA loan program. That's another form of assistance that's out there is they'll defer those payments, loans. So that's just another key to remember that I think we're getting a lot of calls about.
Excellent. Thank you again, Max, Jamie, and Ian. So Max and Jamie and Ian, if you can look in the chat, why don't we scroll up to that and try to run through as many of those questions as we can, and then we'll open it up to live Q&A. Let's prioritize those questions that have been written up if we could.
Can you scroll up to the top? Oh, I see. I need to scroll myself. Let's see here. Let's see. I think probably about the 4th question down is DS to everyone. Does the governor's office have to agree to the $600 per week unemployment insurance add-on? I believe so. I think that's in place already, although I'm not positive. Does anybody else have any information about that? I believe that is already in place, but obviously that's a call to the state. The question about that Kenny has here about the reductions for the PPP is an excellent question, and I also have some various. I've got a spreadsheet on that helps you calculate what your PPP amount would be and what your potential forgiveness would be. And I'll send all this to you, Brian, and then you can make it available if you can. The forgiveness there is a reduction component to the forgiveness, and there's 2 pieces to it. One is an FTE, which stands for full-time equivalent, and so you basically get a portion of your payroll that you paid in 2019, as we talked about earlier, that average payroll times 250%. And then you look at the 8 weeks after that, and that's reduced for reductions that you make in your actual employment levels, the number of people that you have on a full-time equivalent basis. And then the second one is a salary based, is as you reduce your salary, your forgiveness also reduces. And without getting any more complicated than that, you would need to go through and basically make your own calculation, or once the banks have these pieces in place, because the forgiveness is also done through the banks. So for the PPP program, that's done through banks. The EIDL program, these disaster loans Ian was talking about, that's done through the SBA website. So the banks will be handling the PPP program, and the banks will also be handling the forgiveness application process. At least that's my understanding from reading the act. They have a 60-day window after they receive a request for reimbursement or relief of the grant amount, of the loan amount. But again, that's all fluid and it's in process. But that calculation will be something you'll be submitting with your bank, not with the federal government, the way I understand it. The rent question is one maybe I'll take as well, and then let Ian have a shot at him here. But so when you have multiple organizations, it obviously creates some complexity. There are many businesses that have their operations under one entity, and then their real estate under another entity. And those, it depends on form of organization. Do you file, are you essentially a consolidated entity? Who owns what? All of those questions that you're gonna have to answer on a case-by-case basis with your bank. I wish I could be more specific. I've fielded, like Ian has, just tons of calls on this stuff, and every business is a little bit different. You know, everybody has their own particular issues, and you know, I'm happy to work with them. If you have another CPA that you work with, call them up, and you can work with those. And obviously, when the forms and the applications are available through the banks, you know, we'll all really have the information that we need. Right now, it's honestly, it's a little speculative until these applications are available. Ian, are there any there you want to take?
Yeah, sorry. Thanks, Brian. I see that I'm sending messages out improperly to everybody. I'm doing it privately. I don't know what I'm doing. Sorry, it's my first time using Zoom. I should be on it. So I saw Colleen, if you get the PP loan, are you able to use it for rent and utilities? I know you, I'm just going to read you quick. I know, Max, you talked about this a little bit, but the Paycheck Protection Program provides small businesses with 0 free loans of up to 10 million. And to cover payroll and other operating expenses. Up to 8 weeks of payroll, mortgage interest, rent, and utilities can be forgiven. Payments on principal and interest are deferred for 6 months and up to 1 year. And there is this is important too. This program is retroactive to February 15th, 2020 in order to help bring workers who may have already been laid off back into the payrolls. And I'm happy to share that with anyone, this cheat sheet that I'm creating or anything else that we come up with. I put my email in the chat, I think I did, and I'll be happy to share that again and send this out to everybody so that they have it.
The U.S. Chamber of Commerce has an excellent flyer around the PPP program. And Brian, if you don't have that already, I'll send that to you, and you can make that available as well.
Thank you. In JDC, we have a page. James Chang is on our presentation today as well. He's been maintaining an excellent resource site on JDC's main splash page, and there's a whole series of links there that we're getting from others, and he'll be updating those later today. Thank you.
I think, Colleen, I think you had another one, the financial statement. And yes, when you think about this, it's confusing. I think a lot of the questions are confusing until if you put yourself in from the perspective that as you're applying, it's your business is applying. So yes, the personal financial statement is that of the business. The business is applying for the application. I think when you get to, I believe it's question 16 or 17, that's when it'll ask the owners of the business. And if you own 20% of that position, if there's multiple people, multiple owners, you only have to list those owners that are 20% or more. And there is, I've not looked on the most recent application site. I've not gone through all of it, but I do know that if you own 50% or more of other businesses, they were asking for that information before. I'm not sure if they're asking for that now. But overall, yes, that personal financial statement is that of the business. But I can tell you that I've also had people fill out one for the business and one for themselves anyway to upload those documents. So they have that ready and an additional 2 years of tax returns just to expedite the process. What I'm assuming is that with this kind of relief patch of the way the site looks right now, as people are called back to then move forward with the funding, I believe that you're going to be asked for the same documents that everybody else has had to upload already, which are those: the personal financial statement, the 4506, the limited liability, and just the application itself. But all those forms, everything is found on the disaster loan website. And if you have any trouble with those at all or the application process, feel free to give me a call. I'm taking calls all day, and you can call whenever you like.
One of the questions that's on here is a good one about sole proprietors or partnerships where they're taking draws instead of payroll. So obviously, when you're taking a draw as a business owner, it's not payroll. These reimbursements are around payroll. So I haven't worked through that, to be honest, about that specific question. And I think, Sean, or if anybody has some specific questions, I could work with you, or, we could kind of dial into your specific issue, and, try to figure out, whether that payroll, applies for purposes of the total loan amount or for the forgiveness piece. And we just have to, work through that. There's another question on here about seasonal employees. The question is around guides, but, tons of seasonal employees. So if you're using a seasonality for your business to come up with your average monthly payroll, so you look back to 2019, let's say we're talking about June, you've got all your guides or other summer employees in place, you can absolutely use that for purposes of determining your 250% for the loan amount. For the forgiveness piece, though, it looks at your payroll in the 8 weeks following your application approval. And so the amount of forgiveness, my understanding is going to be reduced by this decrease in salary costs and or FTEs between, what you had last year and what you had this year. So yes, on the loan, but the forgiveness piece would be less because those people are not on the payroll currently. Do you want to add anything to that, Ian or Brian? Or Jamie, I mean.
I don't really have anything to add to that, Max.
No.
Okay.
But I just saw another one. Tracy, I think questions about, I think I may have answered this for you already, but yes, the SBA is, I believe they're forgiving, delaying up to 6 months of, it's on this cheat sheet I've got here, we'd have to pull it up, 6 months of current loans, 7A microloans and 504 loans. I know that they're working with clients to defer those payments and interest and avoiding all penalties.
Yeah.
Max, Jamie, can I add to that? If you
bet, yeah.
If any borrowers on the line have an existing ADA loan, I know that ADA is working with borrowers as well. So that could be an option. Reach out to your banker and whoever your ADA loan is with, and you can see if there's any, payment relief options there.
I'm seeing here that Tracy is saying that the application process she was able to do it last night. So that's great. I haven't been on there in the last day or so.
I'm
so the SBA loan rates, Ian, there's a question about loan rates.
Where is?
Just Tracy's asking, it's towards about the middle. If you have an SBA loan, do you know if they will reduce the rate or do you have to reapply?
If it's based on the language that I have right now, what they're saying is those it doesn't say anything about readjusting rates. It says it discusses deferring payments and interest and all penalties for 6 months. About rate changes, I don't know, but I do know that there's been a number of businesses across the state requesting that same information. So I know that I am absolutely have that on my radar because I have a number of clients who are trying to discuss adjusting rates right now, but I don't have the answer to that. Just the deferment.
Yeah. There's a question about, for the PPP program, is the loan amount up to 250%, including rents and utilities? And no, it's not. It's just salaries. And then those salaries are adjusted for amounts over 100, or employees over $100,000 and foreign workers. And there's adjustments. Payroll tax is another adjustment. There's several things that go into that. I will send Brian the spreadsheet that I've put together that kind of, you can walk through it and gives you an idea of how those calculations work. There's a big there's a big caveat that it's just my best estimate, but I think it'll at least get you in a good ballpark as you're thinking these questions through. So, and somebody sent me a text while we were online here, and about this CBJ proposal that's out there, and if those $25,000 or $50,000 loans, I would recommend that you write to the assembly if that's important to you and it's something that you think makes sense to do that. This is all happening very quickly. I mean, it's gonna, it seems like it's evolving day by day, and certainly, the assembly is going to be taking a lot of really serious things into account right now, including what's happening to the CBJ budget when they're making these decisions about what they're going to do. But that particular program, I think it's one of these things that they need to hear from small businesses if that's something you think is important to you. And Brian, I apologize. I'm going to have to run. I've got a 9:30 call. I had an hour blocked out for this. I apologize, but I'm going to have to get off the line here pretty quick.
Yeah, thank you. An hour is what we had planned. We did add a little bit extra. I appreciate everyone's comments, and especially Ian, Max, and Jamie for joining us today to bring some local hands-on experience that you're having with this. Again, James is going to take all of our the resources that we have. Again, on the JDC splash page, there's a COVID-19 resource, and then we link liberally to other organizations. You'll be able to find that link on the DBA, the CBA. I'm sure the Chamber has that running as well, and we'll make sure that these things become as available to many people as possible. Just want to echo the comment. If the city approves tonight, they need 7 votes for an emergency measure to make those loans out. They may want to, because it's $3 million, go slowly. I think the issue in front of us is urgency, because there are some other resources available. But if we want the city to respond to businesses, they're going to have to act tonight. So it's not only, if you think this is important for small businesses, it's not only that you need a program, but you have a sense of urgency and seeing the program stood up quickly. So I hope we've done a pretty good job of answering your questions. Max has to go. I know Ian has to go as well. Jamie probably also does. I just want to give those three, any last comment you want to share with people before we close off? Max, you can go first since you got to dive.
No, I just, again, I'll email some things to you, Brian, and you can decide whether you want to put them on your website or not. A lot of people have my phone or my email. Feel free to contact me if you have any questions, or I can help you. And that's all I have.
Thank you very much. Jamie?
Yeah, I just say thanks everybody for their time, and if they have questions, reach out by email or phone, and I'd be happy to help, or else call your existing banker or somebody in the banking world.
Thank you. Ian?
Yes, folks, I dropped my email into the chat, so if anybody has any further questions, feel free to reach out or just contact the SBDC office. Everything's ringing to my cell now, and I'm happy to share that with everybody. And Brian, I know that we're just internally, as this keeps changing, I'm happy to continue doing this if you do something like this on a weekly basis or whatever it is. I know things are changing, so I'm just happy to offer my assistance anywhere I can.
Excellent. And everyone is collaborating so incredibly well. It's amazing. What a great community we live in. So I'm going to go ahead and close the meeting. I'm not going to end it right away. Give people a chance to pop any links out of the chat that you would like to. But otherwise, we will call it a wrap for today. Thank you, everyone, for participating, and look out for another opportunity to get together.